working on negative exponents. And this is more just an introduction to it. You'll still see some more of this in 9th grade and 10th grade. And so just kind of introducing it to you so that you can see what it looks like. So I want you to put in your calculator 2 to the third. And then I want you to put in 2 to the negative third. So you're going to do 2 to the negative third, 2, and then the caret key, and then negative 3. And then on these fraction ones, I want you to put in 1 as a fraction. So hit the fraction key and then put 1 and then 3 to the second, just like you'd normally put in. And I want you to kind of look at it and see what you notice. So I'm hoping that you've paused and that you're noticing a couple of things. When we put in 2 to the third, we got out 8. But when we put in 2 to the negative third, it was the reciprocal, or the flip, flip of this one, which was 1/8. If you put in 1 over 3 to the second, we got 1/9. But when we have that negative exponent, it flips it, and so we ended up with 9. So reciprocal is just that flip. You did it in, I think, 5th grade when you started learning how to divide fractions. You would keep the first, change divide to multiply, and then times by the reciprocal. So that's where reciprocal comes in. All right, and then so we're going to do just a couple of things. I show you it with variables because you could very easily just put it in your calculator with numbers and it'll give it to you. But I want you to understand a couple of things. So it's going to start one of two ways. It's either going to start with your base number to an negative power, or it'll be a fraction with a base number to a negative power. So if it starts with just a number to a negative power, we are going to write it as a fraction. So all that means is we're going to put a 1 underneath it. That doesn't change anything. Then we're going to write the reciprocal. This means we're going to, and I'll write this word right next to it, we're going to flip it upside down. So the top becomes the bottom becomes the top. So now we flip this, and as soon as that negative exponent, and I always say if it crosses this line, it changes the sign of my exponent. So since I cross that line, we get x to the third power. Now the other one you might have, it might look like this. There's only 2 steps here because step number 1 would say write as a fraction, but that already is a fraction. So then all we have to do is write the reciprocal. So again, we're going to flip it. We're going to flip that fraction. So now we're going to move this to the top. And again, once we cross over this line, once we go upstairs or downstairs, it changes the sign. So we'd be left with x to the third. And you could still put it over 1, but it's not needed. We know that it's a 1 underneath. All right, so now let's try these couple. So when we look at our start, we see that we have 5 to the negative third. Now you could put this in your calculator and it will solve it for you. So when we do 5 to the negative third, there's a couple of things that we can look at. It starts like this, just a base number to a negative exponent. So step number 1 is to turn it to a fraction. Done. Step number 2 is to flip it. And you can leave this, like if this were if this were a variable, you would leave it. But since it is not, if you put this in your calculator, if you put in 5 to the negative third, it would come out as 1 over 125. On this one, it already started as a fraction. So we need to write the reciprocal. So this one already is a fraction. So now I'm going to flip it. It crossed over my line. It went upstairs. So it's going to become positive, which means that my final answer here would be 100, or 10 to the second if I wanted to write it with an exponent. And the reason you need to understand that is because these cannot be put in your calculator. So does it start as a fraction, or does it start as just a base number to a negative exponent? So it already is a fraction. So we're going to write the reciprocal. It goes upstairs, so it changes to a positive, and our final answer would be g to the 5th. Our last one here is not a fraction, so we write it as a fraction. Then we flip it. We went opposite, so it's going to change it, leaving me with 1 over f to the 7th. The thing that I see a lot is that you guys will stop putting that 1 on top, and so you'll just give me f to the 7th. That will be incorrect because you have to flip it into the reciprocal. All right, now our last one, and I'm going to show you a couple of reasons why this works. Normally, if you remember our exponent rules, our rules said we had 2 x's on top, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 x's on bottom. This became 1, this became 1. So I actually had 1 on top and x to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the bottom. So that would be our final answer. Now, for those of you who figured out your rule, you could have done it. Our rule would have been keep your base, which was x, and subtract the exponent, so 2 minus 8, which would have left me x to the negative 6. This right here is equivalent to this right here, but this one is written with that positive exponent. So that's why if you have a negative 6 or an exponent of a negative, when you write the reciprocal, it changes it to a positive.